read this in a gripe that I have. So I'm Christian. I grew up in the evangelical church. I'm now Episcopalian, but there is this sort of...
That's a big switch.
It's a big switch. There's a purity culture that's taught in the evangelical church that I think can be very dangerous.
There's a reason why I call this channel the Biblical Conservative Channel. Because there's a difference between a biblical conservative and a quote-unquote conservative. Even a conservative that calls themselves a Christian. Take, for example, this Alyssa Farah Griffin woman on The View. She had the gall, if you will, to number one, say that she's a Christian. And then she went from an evangelical background to Episcopalian, which essentially means that she didn't want to adhere to biblical truth. So she went to a church that's not going to step on your toes and not going to give you truth. You can live the kind of life you want to live and not have to live a righteous, holy life. But nevertheless, they were talking about the number of people that have slept with somebody else in America. And she said that the purity culture in America is dangerous.
That I have. So I'm Christian. I grew up in the evangelical church. I'm now Episcopalian, but there is this sort of...
That's a big switch.
It's a big switch. There's a purity culture that's taught in the evangelical church that I think can be very dangerous. It's important to talk about the value of sex and knowing the responsibilities behind it, but to tell women your value is tied to the number of partners you had is so damaging. Can we be done with that?
That's why my...
Who tells women that their value is based upon the number of partners that they went with? Who says that? Do you want to talk about soul ties? Are you talking about the fact that when you lay with somebody, you're actually entering into covenant with that person? That's what you're doing. But because you are Episcopalian, because you want to live the kind of life that you want to live, you want to have sex. You want to sleep with everybody you want to sleep with and call yourself a Christian.
There's 100. I'm trying to push back.
No, because think about it. I have a lot of friends who are women who are single in, say, their 40s who have intentionally dated but haven't found the right lifetime partner. By the numbers, you're going to have had a number of partners at that time.
Hey, I want to say, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like button and click subscribe so we can get this message out to as many people as we can to let them know that they're not victims, they are empowered for greatness. There you go. And see, that's the mentality, that's the thought process that a lot of young, modern women have. What she just expressed right there is no different than an unbeliever. And see, that's where I talk about how the world has influenced the church. If you read 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, Paul says, flee sexual immorality. And if you don't know what sexual immorality means, any sex outside of the marriage, any sex outside of the confines of marriage, that's sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does, or a woman, is outside the body. But he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body. Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have from God, and you are not your own, for you were bought at a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. So how can a Christian woman sit up there on that panel and say it's cool for you to have multiple partners and call yourself a Christian? Oh, I know. A person that doesn't adhere to biblical truth, that doesn't adhere to biblical values, that is Christian in name only. This type of woman with this type of mentality is the reason why we have so many abortions in this land. And I'm blaming the men too. The men are responsible for it as well. But the sexual revolution has polluted and poisoned the minds of women. That's a feministic ideology, a feministic mentality that she's possessing, that she's espousing, that she's expressing on that show, on that panel to fit in. She's saying that on that panel as a Christian woman, as a conservative woman. She's advocating that it's cool for these women to sleep around. And then when the women sleep around and the men don't value them, she's saying, why is my value tied to the number I slept with? Because that's the truth. Because it's different. I'm not saying it's right that it's different, but the thought process is different between a man and a woman. I don't think anybody, male or female, should be sleeping around, especially their believer, prior to their marriage, because of the soul ties that take place, and you bring that person with you You bring the person you slept with to the next person you slept with. That's why people have so many issues in this country, so many mental issues, because of all the people they're connected with in their soul. And this is what you have to deal with, young men. Avoid these kind of women. Avoid these kinds of women. These kinds of women do not see themselves as being a temple of the living God. And if you're a Christian man, you have to avoid these kinds of women, because these kinds of women thinks it's cool for a Christian to sleep around and have multiple partners. I don't think so. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should a Christian woman sleep around and have multiple partners?